Marty Nemko. This is a short story, not a short story. It's going to take me about 20 minutes to read it aloud to you, but my first foray into short story writing. This is called A Lazy Career Coach. In fetal position, with Sigmund under his arm, David finally rejoined the living. The alarm clock said 10:07 a.m. "That's okay," he said to Sigmund in morning voice. David stretched, that pleasant introduction to the day. He put Sigmund onto his pillow and thought, how can they make stuffed animals so soft? David twisted out of bed, took off his shorts so the scale wouldn't overweigh him by those few ounces. 175. Okay, I can have French toast. Old people tend to value routine, but at age just 32, so did David. So he kept his could have been a contender t-shirt not hung up, but on the chair for easy access. He also enjoyed shuffling to the kitchen. It's freedom that old people have to not worry so much about what they look like. Then it was his coffee-making ritual. He opened the oxygen-expelling canister to reveal the fair-traded whole-bean mocha java. While it was grinding, he put the filter into the Mr. Coffee, plus his secret weapon, cinnamon. Soon, David was back in bed with coffee, with Sigmund, and the newspaper. But guilt seeped in, and he reached for his copy of the 2023 edition of The Friendly Career Guide, the annually revised 10 million sold king of career advice books. Sigmund, the book is so generous, so folksy, so caring, with anecdote after anecdote from workplaces, colleges, factories, unemployment lines. Just listen to this one from a prison. I believed Jim when he said he'd never murder again. I put my hand on his shoulder and said, let's figure this out. I asked not just about his skills and interests, but about his hopes and his dreams. Even murderers have them, and my job was to resurrect them and him. David couldn't make himself keep reading. It reminded him that he could be doing so much more for his career coaching clients. Why am I so lazy? Is it despite or because Grandpa said, look at the numbers on my arm and I'm still here. Why? Voik. Me and 38 men dug a tunnel out of the Kemp, that fucking Kemp. Voik, David, voik. Don't be lazy. I don't think I'm rebelling against him. That's not why I'm lazy, but who knows? To deceive himself that he was still reading, David just slipped through the book and at the end noticed a list. Recommended career coaches. David thought, I wouldn't put me on that list. David's anger with himself pushed him out of bed and to his desk. Just one client today, just a half-hour follow-up. At the end, David said, at the end of that client session, so would you like to make another appointment? And the client replied, I have to check my calendar. David thought, I need the money, but I don't like to be salesy. So he just said, I understand. After the client hung up, he turned to Sigmund. I'll never see that client again. Some of them say, I'll get back to you. Others ghost you. Still others say, I just can't afford more sessions right now. What they're really saying is, you're not worth the money or the time. And they're right. I became a career coach because I wanted to show Grandpa that I valued work without my actually having to work hard. David couldn't think about that anymore, and so he distracted himself with, I have no more clients today, so maybe I could take a nap. And he took Sigmund back to bed. But seeing the bed reminded him of his laziness. He couldn't make himself read more of the Friendly Career Guide, so he compromised by deciding to do his shopping. He didn't actually need anything. Yeah, he was running out of a few things, but that could wait. But going enabled him to rationalize that he was being productive. He left Sigmund in the car. He'd be embarrassed to bring a stuffed dog into Walmart with its share of tough-looking customers. He got mouthwash. The Listerine knockoff was half the price of the name brand. Canned peaches and juice, store brand, was also around half the price. And then walked the aisles. He liked roaming the aisles, feeling it was like a museum where you can buy the stuff and cheap. You can get anything from a name brand 65-inch TV for $350, and aspirin for pennies a pill. He thought, if they gave me $1 million, I couldn't make that. He tried on sunglasses and liked one. The price tag, hanging on a bit of no-tear plastic wire, was $24.95. He thought, that's ridiculous. It must cost just pennies to make. I'd never steal from a mom and pop, but Walmart? I can't get the price tag off, but could tuck it under the glass's arm so it wouldn't be very noticeable. He looked up, saw in the ceiling a store camera, and decided not to chance it. The next morning, David didn't get to coffee until 10:50. This time, after a quick look at the newspaper, he checked his bank account. It had dwindled to $18,000. Sigmund, I have to work harder, market harder, but I can't seem to make myself. Part of it is me, and part is the reality that there's a career coach under every rock. And with clients now happy to do sessions on phone and Zoom, I'm competing with the immediate universe. Should I go back to school? I'd have more credibility with more letters next to my name. But the years, the money, all that theory. I didn't find even the undergraduate stuff that useful, and this would be more esoteric. On his laptop, he looked at a respected program's curriculum. Models of Career Development, History and Systems of Personality, 2 graduate-level statistics courses. I don't think so. Should I change careers? That's hard. My clients find it really hard unless they have an in. My only real in is with my dad, but he's a consultant on word processing to book authors. That would feel like chocolate that's always an inch away. I majored in English because I like to write. Helping others to write would be frustrating. Besides, working for my dad, he would hound me endlessly to work harder. David pulled out a friendly career guide and looked again at the list of recommended career coaches. Should I ask the author if he would include me on the list? He doesn't know me at all, but I do know how to write. Maybe if I wrote a great letter. The author does include his mailing address. He says no email, so snail mail it is. 1740 Empress Circle, Washington, D.C., Northwest, 20016. Actually, it says Bethesda, Maryland, 20016. By the way, that was an error I just caught. Dear Mr. Nelson, Robbie? I thought, his book is so informal, so human. Maybe he'll like that. I keep your book by my side. It is my career coaching Bible. I especially like your anecdotes, the stories of everyone from dropouts to professionals to prisoners. Your writing inspired me to become a career coach. Unfortunately, to support myself, I need more clients. I know you don't know me, but perhaps the attached lessons I learned from Robbie Nelson will convey enough expertise that you would, in next year's edition of your book, add me to your list of recommended career coaches, and just maybe even write me a letter of recommendation I could put on my website. Of course, I could understand if you said no, and you might well be too busy even to respond, but I would be honored if you did, even if it was just to say no. In any event, thank you for a career guide that not only is inordinately helpful, but inordinately kind. Sincerely, David Michaels, 6705 Meadow Street, Flushing, New York, 11365, 718-111-5724, davidcareercoach@gmail.com. David was sure that in the best case, it would be at least a week until Nelson responded. So for that week, David was as usual indifferent to the mail's arrival. After all, it was mainly bills and junk mail, sheets of coupons for fast food restaurants, glossy flyers for overpriced replacement windows, and supermarket circulars hawking a couple of items at a bargain price that were often out of stock by the time you got there. Yet on day 6, there was a linen-finished envelope from Robert F. Nelson, with his name and return address in Victorian script font. David was surprised at that frou-frou-ness in light of Nelson's book's aw shucks tone. In addition to a letter, there was a button, the kind you used to wear in support of a politician, like, I'm for Clinton. This button bore the classic cartoon of Peanuts' Lucy, with one change. The career coach, not the psychiatrist, is in. Advice 5 cents. And the letter from Nelson said, Dear David, you're right. It would be inappropriate for me to recommend you without knowing you. But I'll make you an offer. If you drive down here to see me in Bethesda, Maryland, stopping along the way at bars while wearing the enclosed button, and have a little career counseling session with at least 3 people, we can talk. You can come any day at 7:30 p.m. Sincerely, Robert F. Nelson. Sigmund? Any day? He doesn't have a schedule? And besides, should I go? I mean, the nerve of him expecting me to drive from Queens to Bethesda and stop at bars along the way to get stories? On the other hand, I guess I could see why he might ask that as proof that I was worthy. I mean, most people of his stature probably wouldn't even have responded. Plus, I'm such a slave to my routine, it probably wouldn't hurt to break out of it for a day or two. It's not like I'm so busy with clients. But should I risk taking my car, or should I rent a car? After all, my car has 207,000 miles on it. On the other hand, it is a Toyota, and my last one ran reliably for 275. and I only sold it because a friend was selling his Corolla with just $160,000 on it. So what if my door has a dent and the front bumper is held up by plastic ties? I'll just park it where he can't see it from his window. That night, David procrastinated and didn't set the alarm clock. I have a client tomorrow. And the next day his excuse was that there was a chance of rain. But the following night he moved the alarm clock across the room and set it for 8 a.m. The next morning David was tempted to press snooze but didn't want to have to do all that again the next day, so he forced himself out of bed and was caffeinated and in his car by 9. As soon as he had negotiated the remnants of rush hour traffic through lower Manhattan and then was on 95 south of Newark, his brain now had room to revisit the idea. Sigmund, will anyone actually ask me for career help because I'm wearing a stupid "the career coach is in 5 cents" button? Will I actually help anyone? If I have to tell Nelson I help no one, he certainly won't include me in the back of the book. I guess I could lie. I'm pretty scummy, aren't I? As he passed Philadelphia, his eyes started to get heavy. Sigmund, I gotta remember driver's ed. Highway hypnosis. Don't stare. Keep your eyes moving. Go from the left of the highway, middle, right, middle, left. He turned on the radio, and when he started to feel sleepy again, he sang along, then switched to a podcast called Philosophize This and argued with the host. Finally, none of that was enough, and it was time anyway to find a bar. Where to stop? He saw the sign entering Delaware. Hey, that's Biden's state. Let me see how it's doing. He followed the signs toward downtown and looked for a friendly-looking bar, and he found the Filibuster Bar and Grill with a logo of a blathering politician. He parked, put on the "Career Coach is in" button, and said, Sigmund, this is stupid. Yeah, I could use Nelson's recommendation. Yeah, I could use an adventure, but chances are they'll look at me like I'm crazy. He sighed and said, at least, Sigmund, you are staying in the car. It'll be hard enough to seem credible without a stuffed dog. He felt like tiptoeing in, but realized that wouldn't inspire confidence, so he strode. It was noon, and the place was bustling with the lunch crowd. He couldn't make himself make eye contact with anyone, so he mainly stared blankly and occasionally glanced at the staff, and noticed a woman who must have been the manager going from table to table making small talk with customers. A few minutes later, he noticed a busser go behind the bar, grab a bottle of wild turkey, and stick it in his backpack. Should I tell her? He couldn't deal with the additional stress of having to make that decision, so he decided it was less stressful to look, button showing, at people who weren't otherwise immersed in conversation. After a bit of radaring, he homed in on a guy at the bar who had 3/4 of a bottle of cheap scotch in front of him, downed a shot glass, and then another. David sat next to him. Can I ask what's wrong? The guy looked at David's button and scoffed. Middle school brass players. What do you mean? I couldn't stand the noise anymore, the cacophony. So I took a trombone that was sitting around and I fired it against the wall. Couldn't control myself. The kid told the principal, and I got called in the office, and she said, I need to let you go. You know, if it happened again and a kid got hurt, the parent would sue me. David didn't know what to say. Silence is sometimes best, and the guy continued. So now I'm 31, 2 kids, stay-at-home wife, and I was just fired for throwing a trombone. I'd win least likely to be hired. What's with the button? David explained, and the guy said, okay, what should I do? So, at least until you find a job, should your wife get a job? The kids are young, and she wants to be a stay-at-home mom, and she reminds me that that was the deal. But you just lost your job. Could she work, even as a wait person, at least for a while until you get a job? So it sounds like money is primary, and I infer you don't have a lot of savings, so you need money soon, which means no going back to school to retrain. Yeah, Einstein. I thought, I won't be able to tell Nelson this story, and it's one more reminder what a loser I am. Maybe I do need to work for my father. A deep breath, and David tried, well, normally the fastest route to good income without going back to school is to look for another teaching job. They suspended my license pending an investigation. No one's going to hire me. And he poured another glass. How about sales? Maybe selling band instruments or sheet music? This isn't 1950. People buy online. I wanted to say not complicated items, but to avoid an argument, I restrained myself and reframed it positively. How about selling a more complicated big-ticket item that requires a salesperson? What? I'm going to take a year to learn enterprise software? Robots? Pointing to the button, with drink having erased any politeness censor, he slurred, You're not even worth 5 cents. Besides, I hate corporations. That's part of why I went into public school teaching. I was getting upset with him and more insecure about myself, but in desperation thought hard and came up with one more idea that had a shot of saving myself and getting a story to tell David. How about the non-profit analog of sales, fundraising? I don't like to ask people for money. He refilled his glass and gulped it down. I'm sorry I wasn't of any help. I of course wish you well. And I trudged out. Back in the car. Sigmund, we should turn around. This won't work. But I don't want to go back to my measly practice or even think about working for my dad. I've driven all this way. I should at least try one more. If I fail, I'll turn around with my, pardon the expression, tail between my legs. David started to get sleepy. Sigmund, I gotta stay awake. The left center right cure for highway hypnosis didn't cure. He stopped for coffee, then turned the radio on again, then louder, then sang along, yet still felt sleepy. Finally, he did turn to another podcast and argue with the host. Ortega y Gasset's masked man is elitist, even racist. And that worked. But when he started to get sleepy again as he approached Baltimore, it's time to find a bar. He parked near the Free Spirits Saloon, stared at Sigmund and said, "Come in with me. What do I have to lose? Maybe it'll attract attention so I don't have to approach people." He sat down wearing his button, but hiding Sigmund under his jacket. But when no one came over, he put Sigmund on the table and moved the button onto him. A guy came over, noticing the iconic Lucy cartoon, but not that the words "the psychiatrist is in 5 cents" had been changed to "the career coach is in." He said to David, "Is that your psychiatrist?" Forcing a smile, I said, "It says career coach, and actually I am one. I could use one." "Tell me about it." "Well, I'm a cosmetic surgeon, and I'm burned out on all the politicians, climbers, and lobbyists wanting to pretty themselves up. I didn't know what to say, so I just said, well, what have you thought about doing?" "I don't know. You're the career coach." I thought, I'm such a loser. That fueled my mind to race. "Maybe take a break and work for Doctors Without Borders? Do they use cosmetic surgeons?" "No, but now that you mention it, Smile Train does. They fix kids' cleft palates in India. Thanks, Guy." And I enjoyed a beer. Back in the car, and now just an hour from Nelson's, he realized that he had to stop at one more bar, but told Sigmund he had done enough. If after all this driving and 2 good tries, 1 successful, he doesn't want to recommend me, so be it. Who knows, maybe he'll appreciate the failure story. There's something to be learned from failure, yet those rarely get published. He exhaled. But being relaxed allowed fatigue to set in. Yet, complacent that Nelson was near, David unconsciously chose to not take precautions against falling asleep. And he did nod off. His car bounced over the curb, and by the time he woke and slammed on the brakes, he was just a foot away from a boutique's picture window. Thanks to the airbag, he was okay, except that it didn't cover either arm. The doctor in the urgent care saw him right away, set both bones, and said, "You were millimeters away from losing use of both of those arms." It took time for that to penetrate. David was too nervous, too eager to get out of there. He hated medical places, reminding him of mortality. Back in the normalcy of his car, he continued on to toward Nelson. "Sigmund, imagine if it was a telephone pole rather than a curb. I could have been a paraplegic, or worse." His GPS led him to a surprise. He pictured Emperor's Circle being some tree-lined cul-de-sac of mini-manses, but the sign said, "National Institutes of Health Medical Center." Sigmund, he's not an MD, so could he be a patient? He couldn't be a patient that long, could he? "Sigmund, wait here." And David lowered Sigmund onto the driver's seat, then decided it might give hospital visitors and staff a needed laugh, and pressed Sigmund's legs into the steering wheel so it looked like Sigmund was driving. As he entered the lobby, he thought, I hate hospitals even more. At the information desk, he was told that Nelson is in long-term care section of room 1736. David stood at the closed door at 1736 and wondered, what kind of shape is he in? What disease does he have? Will he be grateful I came all the way from New York? Will that soften him enough to just accept 2 stories? David didn't want to wait longer and be conspicuous, so he forced himself to knock, and a voice whispered, "In." Propped up in bed was an ancient man with a drumstick in his mouth and a Popeye's chicken box on his tray table. "Mr. Nelson, I'm David Michaels." "Who?" "David Michaels." David pulled the Lucy button from his pocket. "Well, where are the stories?" David was stunned by the terseness given Robbie's So kind book. They're in my head. Write 'em on this laptop, 1 paragraph each. Nervous, David was grateful to be given something to do, so he wrote them and then showed the laptop to Nelson. These are only 2 stories and you failed in 1. Thank you for coming. David thought about arguing, but decided he wouldn't lower himself to beg this mean man. So he just said, I understand. Fine, thank you for the story. But there are 2. I don't include failure stories. I got to give the buyers hope. I'm just curious. Have you ever asked anyone else to get anecdotes for you? How do you think a nonagenarian gets all those stories for each year's edition? Didn't you realize I wouldn't have a button made up just for you? Eager to escape, David said, Have a good day. Nelson grunted. Over his ritual coffee, David told Sigmund, The broken arms were a blessing. I was millimeters away from being a paraplegic. That's who I'm going to specialize in, paraplegic liberal arts majors. He had other fresh start ideas. He took off the could-have-been-a-contender t-shirt that he had stolen and put it in the Goodwill box. And he said to Sigmund, Don't take offense, but I don't need to be so lazy that my pet is a stuffed dog. At 7:14 a.m. the next morning, the alarm went off. Sigmund was under one of David's arms, and under the other slept the real dog he got from a shelter and named after the famous paraplegic, Christopher Reeve, Superman. Anyway, that story is called The Lazy Career Coach. I welcome your thumbs up and accept your thumbs down. I always look forward to your comments and especially like it if you hit the share button below. Share on your social media so that my efforts can have broader impact. And I am flattered if you choose to subscribe to my channel. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I am Marty Nemko.